What is up? My name is Rubidium. Today I wanted to talk about photography. I wanted to talk a little bit about my photographic journey over the last 3 or 4 years and how I went from someone who was interested in photography but didn't really know a lot about it to someone who got paid to do photography and who really enjoyed the process of photography and did it professionally. Now, I am not a outsider, is that the word for it? I'm a professional filmmaker. I had taken photos that I was really proud of, but largely by accident. When the light was right, or I was in the right place, or a person was just looking in the right way, I had a good enough sense to kind of snap a picture and get away with something, but I always felt like a thief. Photography was something that I really came to enjoy. I think the buzz it gave me, or the need it met in me, was that unlike a film which has a conceptual stage, then a script, a pre-production, production, an arc that can take weeks or months, and a lot of the time takes years, photography can be much more instantaneous. In a hundredth or a thousandth of a second, you make a creative decision and you immediately have feedback. Because I was a filmmaker, I already had the resources there for my development, but I wanted to kind of dive in and maybe compare pictures that I took over the last 3 or 4 years and what I learned along the way, and hopefully that would be helpful for some people out there who are on their own photographic journeys or thinking about embarking on one. This was the first photo that I took professionally, I think. I knew this actress's friend from New York City. I think this is 2013. They needed a headshot. I needed the money. And I said, I'll do that, sure. And I had got online and looked at some articles about headshots. I knew you had to get near a window. I had been making films for 15 years at this point. I had a pretty good idea of lighting, but I didn't have that many lights. So I stood her next to a window on this side, got a blank wall behind her, and then I think I put a gold reflector on this side. The 5-in-1, it's probably like a 4-foot gold reflector. We took about 600 photos in a couple of hours. We tried all different outfits, and this is the one that she really liked. And I think this is the raw or close to it. I edited it a lot more than this, but she was really, really happy with it. And the first time I thought, you know what, I could really do this more. I could really make a go of it. This is a shot I took on the roof of our building in Brooklyn, and it just worked. The sun's coming through the skyscraper over here. It's hitting her hair. It's kind of, I can't tell whether it's out of focus or the shutter speed was just low and she moved, but we're up there a lot. The light was good a lot, and I took this photo, and again, it was luck more than skill. So these next three was my friend Jeff's commercial that he was shooting, and he asked me to come along and be the DIT, or the digital imaging technician, and it involved all these dancers that he'd cast. And the morning when I left the house at 6 a.m., I just thought of putting my 5D and a 50mm lens in my bag. And as it turned out, we were standing around for a lot of the time, and I plucked up the courage to ask the dancers one by one if I could take their photos next to these huge windows as the sun was rising. Everyone said yes. I think you'll find that if you ask someone to take their photo, they'll be really happy to give you not only their time, but their contact details so you can send it to them. So, and Rachel were all dancers in the production, and I took the portraits, and again, I knew that's how you could take good portraits, by standing in front of the window. And if you look at their eyes, you can see me. Big double-story windows of like a 14-foot ceiling of a dance studio, and it's gray outside, all this light spilling in. The camera's at about 1.4 on the 50mm, and it's just giving me beautiful illumination on the face, beautiful bokeh in the background. And I just kind of, there's one more. Managed to take some cool photos without too much hassle, and went up working with 3 of these Yeah, I worked again with her and her and her later. These next two are actually the actor friend of mine, Cassandra, who had introduced me to that first girl whose photo I took. And when she saw it, she wanted to get some headshots slash stylist things, and she brought in pictures, and we tried to replicate them. You can see this one in her eyes. I've always really loved this photo. In her eyes, you can see the big 12-inch kind of beauty dish LED circle I have, and then down below, sort of giving the fill, a sort of smaller 6-inch one. The light's really close to her, which is why you get this really nice harsh fall off, and dimensionality to the face. That one, I think it was an Alicia Keys photo she brought in. We tried to make it. Didn't work as well, but I think the fact that this is totally blown out is a bit of a mistake. But this one worked great. This is my friend Eric Stafford, who I've worked together 3 or 4 times now. I'd taken actually a headshot for him before, and when I didn't really know what I was doing, they hadn't come out that great. And so after this shot, I sent it to him and said, "Oh, let's do something similar." And stood him in front of the window with the same lighting setup, really high fill and a overhead key. Put diffusion in front of the window. I think it was a white sheet, and got this really cool shot. Still really stands up. This was my neighbor in Brooklyn, who heard that I was taking photos and rushed over. He was wearing his shorts and this suit, and he wanted a headshot for LinkedIn. I don't think he used this one. I think we took a whole bunch of smiling ones too. I think at this point I had ordered off Amazon a 4-foot softbox. I think it cost like $40, and it took 6 months to arrive. But I think you can see I've got the same light as this 12-inch beauty dish LED inside the softbox, which is giving them that core. And I think this is just a bounce. And this is actually, we did a shoot with her and her friend, and this is her waiting for her friend to get her makeup done so she can get her makeup done. So she's kind of a blank canvas at this point. I really love the way the light played across her back. Yeah, this is the same shoot. That's her friend, and similar lighting setup, kind of beauty lighting, really hard backlight, but the makeup worked great. I really feel like these had impact. And still, I'm just shooting my friends, and I'm just finding people, not really getting paid much to take photos, but building my portfolio and really loving, really getting engaged in photography. I think that was the key, that through luck or just the fact that I was shooting with good equipment meant that I had a lot of success early on. This is still 2014. This is a little bit later. I'd started an Instagram, and this girl, either found me or I found her on Instagram. She was visiting from Singapore, where she lives. She was in LA. She was reaching out to photographers. She reached out to me. Actually, same lighting as this, but with dual kickers, meaning that there's 2 3/4 backlights and a hair light. So it's a 5-light setup with a black background. And I think I got this from probably around here. I was watching a lot of Creativelive shows, which, if you haven't seen them, are really awesome. They're kind of like deep dives into photographers' process. I'll put the links in the description. I think it was a Joel Grimes Creativelive that I learned this from. He used it a lot with flash. I used it with constant lighting, but it came out great. And then this is an important step for me, because we went from this, which is a much more just, all these are just the face against an abstract black or white or gray background. And then I wanted to do one on my couch. This pose is totally up to her. And then I put a light outside with a blue gel coming through the curtains. She had all these amazing tattoos, so she wanted to show those off. She's a huge Star Wars fan. And this, we took a bunch of photos like this. None of them came out nearly as good as this. This was, her pose, of course. I just kind of captured it. But what I did do is make sure that she pushed her nose towards the light. So we got the front of the face lit, side of the face dark, and this beautiful dimensionality and this sort of nice curl through her body. Summer in early 2016, I started getting on Model Mayhem, which, if you haven't used it, is a social networking site for photographers and models. You can get on there. You can find people. You can search, female models in Los Angeles who are open to time for print, meaning free shoots. They come with their outfits and their makeup done usually. You take the photos and then send them the photos. Amazing dancer. She brought a whole bunch of dance outfits. So we shot one that I thought kind of has this nice attitude and pose to it, and one that's sort of like crazy and messy and not like all the other photos that she had. It's another Model Mayhem model. Anna, she was amazing. I think she's so naturally beautiful. We took a bunch of photos. This was the just door light. I think I'd watched Chris Orwig's Creativelive recently that week, and this is just standing in the doorway of my house. Well, I'm standing in the doorway shooting in. She's standing in the doorway looking out, and it's all the light from outside that's illuminating her in the dark background of my living room. And she just reached up and touched her hair, and it made the photograph. This was cool. This is a model, again, for someone from Model Mayhem. I had shot her in my studio. Yeah, around this time, when I moved to Los Angeles, I got my own studio attached to my house. And I suddenly had a dedicated space. In New York, if I wanted to shoot, I had to take all the lights out, set them up, and then put them all back in. So I shot this model's in my studio, and then she wanted to do a more environmental shoot at her house, which is where we shot this. I brought some flashes. I didn't know how to get the room lit and her lit. The flash was too bright and the room was too dark without looking like a paparazzi shot. So what I ended up doing is just using the modeling light of the flash. So it's through a softbox illuminating her. It's kind of high up here, facing like 45 degrees to the side, facing 45 degrees down. And it just was this, gives this wonderful sense of luxury. I love her expression. Another Model Mayhem model. This is kind of going back to that first lighting, but this time I'm kind of adding a little bit from the side with the rim light, and yeah, this came out great. So one thing I did find is that, like anything, photography you get better with practice. Here's a pretty basic beauty light of this absolutely stunning model called India. I think I found her through Model Mayhem, or she found me. We did a shoot at my house. The photos came out great, just sort of great, right? Like they're just pretty. They weren't interesting, and we both wanted to do something again. So this is totally her concept. To do this crazy sort of African-inspired makeup, and we did a shoot in the house, and then all the oranges in my backyard were ripe. So this is kind of an experiment for me to do outside or exterior daytime lighting with a flash. This became one of my go-to lighting setups to have on the bright sunny days in California, to put half-grid diffusion curtain over my main window and have the model stand in front of it and then light them from that. And you get this beautiful, breezy, open light that is super easy to set up and almost always gives a good photograph. Here's another friend of mine who wanted a headshot, and I had just got the light panels. So we set up a much more sophisticated version of my 5 light setup that I'd done earlier. It's another case of we did a lot of photographs. This one just sort of hit and it came together. This is actually kind of similar, but it's the same lighting as this, but I have a black flag kind of draped over the middle of the white. So the white spills in from both sides and it gives you this great illumination of the cheekbones. This is Davi. She had an amazing haircut that day. She has these wonderful green eyes, and she was wearing this coat. I think we'd just come back from another shoot, another film shoot, and she posed for me and loved the photos. Actually, this was my first time I shot on a medium format camera. It's a Leica. This was family members who was visiting, taking photos. I got to have a lend of it and see what it could do. The file sizes are huge. Love the pictures. So I should talk a little bit about inspiration. My major sort of like, not inspiration, but the person I most looked to for lighting was this Californian photographer called Michael Muller. Does a lot of movie posters, does a lot of portraits. He has an amazing eye, and I kind of like is always doing different things. He always have really high contrast. He always has, experiments with different colored gels. His photos are always just so beautifully lit, so beautifully composed. He's photographed, everyone and their dog. He's photographed every celebrity there is. And I think he does a lot with very little, meaning his framing is pretty much just the person's head most of the time. He doesn't do anything too crazy with the light. Wow. He kind of keeps it simple, and he just works with an amazing expression from the subject of his portraiture. He's really able to elicit something striking, and I think that's a achievement, since a lot of the people he photographs have been photographed, hundreds if not thousands of times before. Up to this point, Michael Muller was the guy I was kind of someone who I really liked to emulate, someone who I aspired to shoot photographs like. The pressure with photographing models on Mall of Mayhem or your friends is that you really have to make them look good. They really want to, and I felt the pressure as a photographer to really kind of perform in the sense of like doing something really beautiful, and making them feel beautiful and feel strong or masculine or whatever it was, and not treat the shots as much like works of art, but more like something that had to serve a purpose, had to get this person work, or be this person's Facebook profile or the album cover. So around this time, this is Leah. So this is another good example of doing multiple shoots with one person and being able to progress each time. This is when we first met. We shot some pictures, but nothing that would probably make my portfolio. And then when we met up again, she was more trusting. She was sort of like a little more open. We got a better location. We're able to shoot more stuff, and the pictures came out, much more. I feel like we were able to produce much more powerful images. Oh, this is another good example of model directed creativity. This is Alicia. She had seen a picture on the internet that she really liked of someone looking through a glass window that was wet, and she showed up. She had some great looks, and we tried to like recreate that, and it came out awesome. I mean, I would never have thought of shooting like this if she hadn't suggested it. I feel like because she's so beautiful, I would have felt the pressure to kind of capture that beauty, but instead we were able to do something that is really interesting. So it was around about this time I discovered the work of Frank Ockenfels, another American photographer based in Los Angeles, who has been working for years and years as a portrait photographer, as a commercial photographer, and he's a lot like Michael Muller, but with the exception that he really doesn't toe the line technically as much. He really likes to kind of destroy images. He really likes to do things that could be considered bad photography, like use broken, cracked lenses. He really likes to experiment more wildly with color. He really likes to sort of break up the image a lot more than Michael Muller does. I mean, this is a great example of this sort of like long exposure blur with the kind of animal Lucian Freud, Francis Bacon feeling to it. And I saw that, and it was a revelation for me. It was like photography doesn't need to be beautiful. He had this absolutely amazing quote in an interview I saw of his on YouTube, where he talked about if you just go and do the shot everyone's expecting, you just won't work again. If you go in there and take the shots everyone's expecting, put everyone at minds at ease, and then go and get something truly deranged, crazy, strange, and unusual, you'll work again. I mean, this is probably one of his most famous pictures of Angelina Jolie, but he didn't stop there. He didn't stop at the photograph. He printed the photograph out, he cut it up, he like drew on it, and then that was what Rolling Stone ended up using. Look at this one of Elijah Wood. I mean, that's not how anyone thinks of Elijah Wood, but it is a really powerful image. It's just not the same crap you get every single time you take a picture of a celebrity. So that was part of my inspiration. So earlier this year, I started taking these photos of models in masks as sort of a way to get away from, trying to accurately portray how beautiful or their personality, and wanted to do something that was a little more Okenfellian, if that's a word. A little bit more, a bit more storytelling, a little bit more of a challenge, a little bit more of an expression rather than just a documentation. And I loved this. I absolutely loved these. I loved how they came out. I loved the process of making them. This was the one I did on Baron Samedi. We got a smoke machine for like $25 and rented a studio for I think $20 an hour. I'm as proud of these photos as any I've ever taken. I think they really have a power to the image that I hadn't got in my earlier work. So that was my photographic journey, for what it's worth, and for anyone else out there that found it interesting. I certainly haven't stopped taking photographs. I'm probably taking more now than I have in any time in the past. I think photography is going to be something that's there for me a lot, and I'm going to try and incorporate it into this channel because it is much harder to organize a film shoot, for me at least, than it is a photographic shoot. And I'm also able to sort of step out of the photographic process and talk about it to a camera than I am of the film process, which for my, is much more absorbing for me. Please check out the links in the description. That really helps me, and see you next time.